my name is Natalie Dawson. I'm the director of the Wilderness Institute at the University of Montana and a professor in the College of Forestry and Conservation. In honor of the 50th anniversary of the Wilderness Act, I'm going to be doing a wilderness reading today from a book called The Only Kayak by Kim Heacox. Kim Heacox is a longtime resident of a small town in Alaska, Gustavus, Alaska, and he was also a longtime kayak ranger in Glacier Bay National Park. And this book is autobiographical in the sense that it talks about his experiences in Alaska, both as a ranger and as a community member in a small town living on the edge of wilderness. The section of the story I'm going to read to you takes place after he has given a talk to a large number of people on a huge cruise ship. And cruise ships are the normal way that most people see much of Southeast Alaska, this region that's dominated by huge glaciers and lots of ocean, small islands, and big coastal mountains. He read a story called Stikine, which is a story by John Muir about the small dog named Stikine that John Muir traveled with while he was exploring Southeast Alaska in the 1800s. The Stikine story attracted 300 passengers who sat stone still while I read every word. Outside, the faint ringing of casino slots leaked down the long passageway but seemed to distract no one. When I reached the part where Muir says to Stikine, "Come on, little fellow, no right way is the easy in this rough world. We must risk our lives in order to save them," you could have heard snow falling on water. I finished, and the audience sat motionless, then burst into applause. People surrounded me afterward to hear more about John Muir and the little terrier. I was stunned, and I thought, dear God, these people are hungry for stories, for authenticity, for something arduous and real, anything but Fox television. A woman asked me if John Muir was my hero. My hero? I suppose he is, in a way. Have you ever heard of Michio Hoshino? She had not. Nobody on that ship had. What was it Fitzgerald said? Show me a hero and I will write you a tragedy? The Japanese have no word for wilderness. Places close to it are considered unkempt. Other places are called nature, the ones manicured by monks who trim trees and rake stones into garden-like islands surrounded by urban sprawl. Young men by the millions throw coins into Shinto temples and pray for jobs. I dreamed about Michio standing there. He pulls out a coin, and when nobody is looking, he walks away and keeps walking until he reaches Alaska. I can't explain it. Dreams have no logic. It isn't easy to be different. It isn't easy, at first, to find comfort in the silence, the big nothing that says so much. It's easy to rev up the machine, climb aboard, join the race, tune in to millionaire players who perform for billionaire owners. Gold coins speckling, spoiling the bed. Nature and technology have an uneasy relationship, yet each has something to offer. One is where we came from, the other is where we're going. One shrinks as the other grows. One loses in a war, the other wins and determines winners. One makes you feel vulnerable, a subject of the earth. The other makes you feel powerful, a lord of the earth. One is Christ in the desert finding clarity. The other is Christmas at Macy's buying Calvin Klein. One explains death and disease, while the other attempts to eradicate them. One is accepting what comes your way. The other is hacking DNA. One teaches grace. The other breeds pride. One is about slowing ourselves down, the other is about making things fast. One is words, the other word processing. One is stories, the other statistics. Wilderness is on the map, but wildness resides in that most wondrous and mysterious chamber, the human heart. You can't measure it any more than you can measure the music of a mountain stream or the thunder of running caribou. Toward the end of the cruise, I had dinner with an elderly couple who had attended my Stikine talk. Married for 60 years, they had 5 grown children, 17 grandchildren, a summer home in Connecticut, and a winter home in Florida. The woman said, "Every time we go down to Florida, there's more construction and development. It's hard to watch." "Can you imagine what Florida will look like in another 100 years?" I said casually. She pulled back. "I can't think about that." Not until I returned to my spacious stateroom to find a mint on my pillow and the bed turned back by the invisible room steward did I consider her comment. Of course she couldn't think about it. If she did, if she took to heart every Orwellian, apocalyptic aspect of endless growth on a finite planet, it would turn her world upside down. No, it was easier to slide along and go about one's business knowing things aren't right, but that somebody, someday, will address the problem. Or maybe things are right. Maybe there is no problem. Who said ceaseless growth will one day bring us to a point where we lose more than we gain? All this doomsday stuff is hogwash, an empty cake cooked up by academics and the liberal press. Maybe we were put on this earth to not just to use it, but to use it up. Saddle up, boys. Freedom is back. Time to harness and harvest everything and put America back to work with a million invisible hands lopping off the peaks and valleys of biodiversity. Some people can do that. I'm not one of them. Dr. Folsom, my geology professor, taught me to see the world differently. One of the costs of having an ecological education, said Elda Leopold, another pesky academic, is that you live in a world of wounds. When alone, I thought of my friend Michio. His life and death created many eulogies, and to a degree I joined them. But part of me didn't want him to be my hero. It's a heavy weight. Heroes are made to be broken. He spilled his coffee and sang off key. He was just a friend, a rare and beautiful friend who slept on the ground and happened to be a brilliant photographer. It was becoming increasingly clear to me that my dearest friends, Richard, Michio, Melanie, and Hank, all slept on the ground. They slowed down, they listened and took risks, and won my deep respect. They never really went after money. It's easy in Alaska to get a state or federal government job and be secure and never accomplish a single daring thing the rest of your life. None of them did it. They moved through their days on the edges of things, taking care of loved ones but dedicated to something larger as well. They belonged to a small but growing core of Alaskans who understood Elda Leopold and felt the wounds we inflicted on nature. The earth, too, was a loved one, and their expression of that love sometimes had them saying daring, unpopular things. They carried the burden of a crisis others refused to recognize, yet they never lost their senses of humor. It was easier to laugh than to cry. On first meeting Richard and Hank, this might not seem apparent. There's Richard, careening down the halls of the Juneau Middle School where he teaches, day pack filled with books over his shoulder, walking that glacier walk, working with students, coaching track, nurturing his own kids but never boasting about them. Late at night, he writes an op-ed on the Arctic refuge and gets scathing rebuttals. The truth is subversive, he tells me, right to the center of what you believe. Dare to be different. The most important writing has always been revolutionary. Richard's op-ed elicited a response from none other than Lou Williams, Mr. Pro-Growth. What did Richard do? He phoned the guy and invited him to lunch. What was that like? I asked. He's a nice man, Richard told me. It's hard to demonize people once you get to know them. Then there's Hank, barefoot in the woodpile, axe in one hand and phone in the other, as he works to establish a land legacy that will keep 1/4 of Gustavus open and undeveloped forever. An hour later, he's on the phone again, working to set up a local hospice program. When Hank and Anya got married in an outdoor ceremony at Eagle Beach, north of Juneau, I wrote a song called Two Healers and played it for them on my new Martin D28, a gift from Melanie. Anya was working as a family physician in a medical clinic in Juneau. Hank split his time between Gustavus and Juneau and healed by caring. While many people become islands as they age, isolating themselves for one reason or another, I could see Hank becoming just the opposite, an ocean. In ways uniquely his own, he would touch the shores of everyone around him. About this time, Bob Howe, the former superintendent of Glacier Bay, lost his wife Doris after more than 50 years of marriage. They lived summers in Gustavus and winters in the San Juan Islands of Washington State. When Doris's health failed, she asked to come home to die. Gustavus welcomed her. Townsfolk visited day and night while she grew weak. They read to her and held her hand. When she finally slipped away, everyone gathered for a large dinner and farewell. A week afterward, I saw Bob at the Bear Track Mercantile and asked how he was doing. "I'm okay," he said, loudly so he could hear himself through his hearing aids. "You know, I moved up here because of all the country, the place, the wildness, and all that wilderness. There's nothing like wild Alaska. But after all my years here making friends, I realize now that it's not the place that makes this place, it's the people that make this place. I told him about a woman in Juneau who described Gustavus as flat and boring and on the edge of nothing but wild country. The mountains were too far away. There was too much wilderness. She said, "There's no there." "Maybe so," Bob said with a smile, "but there's plenty of here."